All right. Looks like we are live. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Government Oversight Committee. Today's meeting is being broadcast live and recorded on the GOC's YouTube channel. The audio stream for today's meeting is also being broadcast on the legislature's website. A few reminders before we get started. The legislature's audio stream is turned on at the scheduled start time for the meeting, which is 9 a.m. The YouTube stream we turn on at or near the scheduled start time for the meeting, and it will remain on until the end of the meeting. If you're on the Zoom meeting platform and your camera or microphone are on, whatever you say or do will be heard, and that includes during breaks. As a reminder, the live stream will continue even if we do take a break. Please remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking, and please remember to turn off your video if you need to leave the room at any time. Written materials for this meeting have been mailed or distributed electronically to committee members and have been posted to the OPEGA website at the start of the meeting, and you can find that on their website under the GOC meetings section. During the meeting, the OPEGA director and assigned staff may share documents on the screen. During the meeting as well, the chairs will recognize committee members, staff, or others to participate. Members may get the attention of the chair by either raising your physical hand, raising your virtual hand using the functions near the bottom of the screen, or by making a request in the chat box in Zoom. But remember that the chat box is not for any substantive discussion on any matters that are before us because the public is not able to see that discussion. Please limit the use of the chat box to getting the attention of the chairs or the staff, or if you are having any kind of technical difficulties, that would be a good use for the chat. Finally, a reminder for any vote that we take today, members must be able to be seen and heard. So your video and your audio must be on, and we will vote by raising our physical hands if it's a relatively quick motion, or we may call the roll. So with that, we'll continue with introductions of committee members. And this morning, I think we will start first with our newest member of the Government Oversight Committee. As many folks know, with the election of a new member to the state Senate just a few weeks ago, that created a situation where some committee assignments had to be shuffled. So we're very pleased to welcome and like Senator DeChambeau to introduce herself.
Unmute myself. Thank you very much. I know many of you, and I am most honored to be with this group. So I am Senator Susan DeChambeau from District 32, 6 towns, great looking towns, good towns, Dayton, Lyman, Alfred, Arundel, Kennebunkport, and my hometown of Biddeford. That's why. So if you see the Biddeford map behind me, I mean, it's so easy to brag. So yeah, I said that for the benefit of Senator Libby, but thank you very much.
Well, Senator DeChambeau and I do enjoy bragging about our respective communities. So thank you, Senator DeChambeau. Next up for introductions, Senator Keim.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Keim, and I represent the beautiful Western Maine Mountain region. And welcome, Senator DeChambeau. I'm so glad you're joining us on this committee. It'll be nice to work with you.
Great.
Thank you. Senator Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Donna Bailey. I represent the residents of Saco, Old Orchard Beach, Hollis, Leamington, and part of Buxton in the Senate.
Thank you. Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Senator Libby. I'm Rick Bennett. I have the honor of serving 13 beautiful Western Maine towns in the foothills and lakes region across Oxford and Cumberland counties.
Thank you. Senator Timberlake.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Senator Jeff Timberlake. I represent District 22, which is part of Androscoggin County and Kennebec County. And Senator DeChambeau, I welcome you and enjoy your smiling face with the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. As Representative Millett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Sowen Millett. I represent House District 71, including the citizens of Norway, Sweden, Waterford, and West Paris.
Thank you. Representative Stover.
Good morning, and thank you. Hello, Senator DeChambeau. It's really nice to see you here. My name is Holly Stover. I represent 6 coastal towns in Lincoln County, including Boothbay Harbor, Southport, Edgecombe, Westport Island, and part of South Bristol.
Thank you. Representative Arata.
Hey, my name is Amy Arata, and I represent House District 65, which includes New Gloucester and part of Poland.
Thank you, committee members. And we are also joined today by Lucia Nixon, Director of OPEGA, Etta Connors, who serves as our clerk. We have Amy Gagne and Matt Kruk, both analysts at OPEGA, who are here to support us in our virtual meeting. So thank you all for joining us.
Oh, I will interject that the good senator forgot to have me introduce myself. I'm Representative Genevieve McDonald. I am the House Chair of Government Oversight, and I would be remiss if I didn't throw my hat in the ring for prettiest district. I represent the offshore islands of Penobscot Bay and Western Frenchman's Bay. And Senator DeChambeau, I'm very happy to have you join us. Thank you.
And
Thank you,
so-
Representative McDonald, for speaking up. And of course, I forgot myself as well. So you're in great company. I am Nate Libby, and I represent all of the people of Lewiston in the Maine State Senate, and I serve as the Senate co-chair. Senator Keim.
Thank you. I just forgot to mention that I have a call a little bit later this morning, so I will jump off for that and then rejoin as I can.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Timberlake.
And you'll see me turn my video off, and it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I can't sit still. My mother and father have accused me for years, and I'll make you seasick, rocking back and forth, spinning back and forth in my chair. So I'm really paying attention, but I can't stop myself. So I try to sit still, but it doesn't work.
I understand. Thank you for the disclosure. Okay. Have I missed anyone else who needs to be introduced properly? All right, seeing none, thank you. First item on our agenda is a review of the summary of the March 12th, 2021 GOC meeting. The minutes have been mailed to you and have been included electronically. No vote is required on this review, but if there are any adjustments or edits that members would like to make, please let us know. Seeing none, we will move into new business. This is tab number 2 in your packet. OPEGA's FY 22-23 budget presentation for consideration and approval by the Government Oversight Committee. And for this, I will turn it over to Lucia.
Thank you very much, Senator Libby. Good morning, everyone. The first item you have as new business is the presentation of the FY 22-23 budget. And just for context, the OPEGA budget is a line in the overall legislative budget. And the way that appears then is the legislative budget is part of the overall budget submission, and OPEGA does have a separate line. And so there's 2 sets of numbers that go in that line. We did provide you a lot of background worksheets for you to look at, but I want to emphasize today that there's a personal services line and there's an all other line, and those are the 2. So if you want to look at the materials that were sent to you in the packet, on the personal services page, you'll see the bottom line there. Those two numbers, the FY 22 1.3 million and the FY 23 1.4 million. Those are the two numbers that actually appear. Those are based on a position count of 9 positions in OPEGA, director, secretary, and 7 analysts at different levels. And these numbers are based on the Legislative Council's approved salary schedule effective October 2020. And the rest of the lines worked out there below the permanent regular are just the various employee benefits and retirement costs that flow from the staff positions. The one difference in that page is there is a per diem line, and that's for you all during the interim when you get a legislative per diem for participating in the GOC meetings. That does show up on that page. And on the other set of materials, the other document that you received is the all other budget. Was a 2-page document. Again, I want to focus your attention on the bottom line, which is at the very end. And that is the grand total for all other, which is flat funded at the same level as it was in FY 21. So it's flat funded for FY 22 and 23 at $149,088. As I present these to you, just for the process is that this has been submitted in the fall. It gets submitted as part of the overall legislative budget as these lines, and it's customary and actually required by statute that the numbers get presented to the GOC for their consideration and approval. And that historically happens in the spring during the first regular session.
Thank you, Lucia. Are there questions or comments from the committee?
Could I comment?
Representative Miller.
Thank
Yes,
you,
please.
and thank you, Lucia, for the explanation. I just want to confirm with a bit of irony that the numbers that Lucia just outlined are included in the majority budget that will be presented next week. The irony is that we've not had a public hearing on it in the Appropriations Committee, nor has there been any discussion of report backs or anything relating to it. But the baseline numbers that will be in the majority budget next week do confirm the numbers as presented this morning by Lucia. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Miller. Are there other questions or comments? Senator Kime.
I only have one question that's really minor, but it's a curiosity more than anything. What is longevity pay?
Sure. So longevity pay is a factor that goes in for certain state employees that have been employed for a certain extensive duration of time that reach the tops of their pay scales, and there's a certain adjustment that is added to those folks after a certain number of years thresholds are met.
And what is that? What is the maximum number of years that then would become?
Sure, I'd have to get back to you on that. I need to look into that in more detail.
That's fine. I was just curious.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Senator DeChambeau.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm out of turn to just step in on that one. As a former state employee, it's a pay scale like A through G. Every year you've got a little percentage. Well, you've got career employees who have been there 30 years. They would have stopped 20 years ago getting a raise. So longevity is the next step, would be a certain raise, and it would be good for like 5 years or something. And then they go to the next step, and that's good for 10 years. It stays the same. So it doesn't increase, but it's maximum, and it's for a number of years. And Lucia would be able to tell you the number of years.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? I'll just pause for a moment to welcome Representative O'Neill. Representative O'Neill, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name is Maggie O'Neill, and I'm here representing House District 15, which is in Saco.
Thank you. So is there a motion to approve the OPEGA budget as presented by the OPEGA staff?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Representative McDonald has moved approval of the OPEGA FY22, FY23 budget, seconded by Representative O'Neill. Is there any further discussion or questions on the motion? Is the committee ready for the question? Lucia or Etta, I'm sorry, will one of you call the roll?
I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Etta.
Senator Libby.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Bailey.
Yes.
Yes. Senator DeChambeau.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Keim.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Timberlake.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Bennett.
Yes.
Yes. Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Yes. Representative O'Neill.
Yes.
Yes. Representative Stover. Representative Stover?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Dillingham? Absent. Representative Millet?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Arata?
Yes.
Yes. 11 yes, 1 absent.
Thank you. The motion carries. The next item on our agenda is a request for review of the Department of Administrative and Financial Services Workday Main project. This is under tab 3 in your packet. And so this request has been made by Representative Justin Fecteau. GOC members, you have some of his background materials as well as a summary that's been prepared by the OPEGA staff. Again, that's behind tab number 3. I believe Representative Fecteau is in the waiting room, and so I will admit him. And so basically what we're going to do is ask Representative Fecteau to provide us with a brief presentation of his request. After he's completed that, the committee will have the opportunity to discuss his request. We can ask follow-up questions and consider further action. Just as a reminder, and especially for some of the newer members of the committee, GOC has a number of options available to us for what we can do with new requests. We could obviously take no further action. We could refer the request to a policy committee of jurisdiction, which we happened to do a few weeks ago with the Blueberry Commission and ECF. We can request additional information from OPEGA or the relevant state agencies before making a final decision of what to do with this request. We can request OPEGA conduct some limited research and respond directly to the requester. We could add this to the standby list of projects that are included in our work plan. We could vote to add it to our work plan for the current biennium. We could also vote to add this to the work plan as an immediate review. That's just as a reminder for the variety of options we have at our disposal. So with that, we will welcome to the Government Oversight Committee Representative Fecteau. Good morning.
Good morning, Senator. So good morning, Senator Libby, Representative McDonald, and members of the Committee on Government Oversight. On March 4th, I originally reached out to this committee regarding my concerns surrounding the Department of Administrative and Financial Services Workday Initiative. In that March 4th letter to the committee, I reported what I stated during that day's Appropriations and Financial Affairs work session. The issues I brought up to light are twofold. They concern both fiscal and misconduct issues. As to the fiscal issues, which I had previously described as fraud, waste, and abuse, I stated, I have reached this conclusion after learning more of the details of the amount of money previously spent, length of the project development, delays in implementation, leadership contractor employee turnover, the Workday contractors walking off the site, and the large amounts of proposed expenditures in the supplemental and biennial budgets. On March 8th, the Portland Press Herald reported on the story for the first time. Within that article, the following became clear. The state is threatening to terminate the contract and demand a refund of $21 million after the contractor walked off the job in February. DAFS hired a third-party contractor to conduct an independent assessment of the project. When the state communicated the concerns from the assessment, Workday responded by pausing all work on February 12th. The state also sent a letter to the company giving them 30 days to remedy a series of defaults and failures, and sexual misconduct allegations had been unknown to DAFS. On March 9th, the Portland Press Herald reported on the story for a second time. Within that article, the following became clear. The US cities of Baltimore and Denver have had issues with Workday glitches and interfaces. DAFS states that Workday shortfalls included, quote, failure to deliver adequate labor cost and ad hoc reporting solutions, failure to meet certain expectations in the agreed upon statement of work, and operating in bad faith, end quote. On March 10th, I completed a form concerning a possible investigation with the Office of Program Analysis and Government Accountability. I am under assumption that this form has been shared with you all. As to the allegations of sexual misconduct, I have been informed that formal complaints have been submitted and an investigation has been launched. Given all that has become clear and the lack of information that has been shared with lawmakers, even as DAFS has been given many opportunities to discuss the Workday initiative during the supplemental budget process, I am urging a full, complete, and independent investigation. I believe that the toxic work environment surrounding this program has been a waste of taxpayer funds and put state personnel at risk, even though this modernization is much needed. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Representative Fecteau. Are there questions or questions of Representative Fecteau from the committee? Representative McDonald.
So I have a question, and it may not be best answered by Representative Fecteau, but can somebody explain to me exactly what Workday is? I mean, I understand part of what it is, but I'd like a more thorough understanding of what program we are discussing. Thank you.
If it's okay with the committee, maybe I'll ask Lucia to review some of the information that she and her team have gathered ahead of this request. Lucia?
Thank you. So you have in your notebooks a document titled OPEGA Review Request Summary. And let me see if I can just actually share that. Are you seeing that on the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Workday is a human resources management system, and the state has a mainframe payroll only system that uses a very archaic, as I understand it, programming language, of which there is only 2 state employees still remaining that are versed in that programming language. So the state went out 5 years ago to bid for a comprehensive human resource management system, and those are referred to as HRMS systems, and to replace that payroll only system. So right now there's a payroll only system, and then there's a bunch of other what they call shadow systems and different systems that have to interface. And so the state wished to go out and come up with, modernize and get to this century with our human resource management practices. So they went out to bid and initially contracted with one company to do this. And that had a go live date of 2018. That contract was terminated for lack of delivery of the product. And at that time, the state went back out to bid and contracted with Workday. It had an initial go live date of 2020, and that has since been revised to 2022. To answer your question more directly, Representative McDonald, Workday is both a software platform that covers human resources and related financial functions, and the state or the client of Workday pays a subscription fee per user for that. Workday is also a company that offers consulting and professional services to implement the software. So it is both a software product and a company. As Representative Fecto mentioned, Workday did pause all its work for the state of Maine on February 12th, and DAFS issued a notice of termination on late February with an effective date of actually today. And there's a link to a letter, to that letter, which was available on the State and Local Government Committee's website.
Thank you, Director Nixon, both for myself and for the public who may be joining us today.
Sure.
Are there further comments or questions for either Director Nixon or Representative Fecto? Representative Arata.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that I've been looking into this a little bit myself, and it's a cloud-based system, which usually you get a cloud-based system. It's easy to use. They do all the programming somewhere else. It's in the cloud. I don't understand. I guess I don't understand why this is so difficult. I think all of us, if we get dental insurance, for example, through the state, we see at the bottom of our bill that we can't pay in advance because Workday is about to be implemented. I've seen that since I've been a legislator. So we write that little check for $70. I guess it's been going on for years, and I don't understand what's so difficult. And I could be, uninformed. I mean, I would love to learn more about it. I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's gone significantly over budget, and hasn't been implemented yet. So there's something wrong, and I just can't get my arms around it. But that's my comment. Thank you.
Further comments or questions? Representative Millett, followed by Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Senator. I have a couple of questions for perhaps Director Nixon. In the bullets below the table of expenditures, et cetera, there are two references to investigations ongoing. And I wonder if you could flesh them out a little bit, Lucia. The first one being that DAFS has hired a third party to conduct an independent assessment of the project. And the review has identified a number of issues. Without detail, that really doesn't convey a lot of information to this committee. And the second one is that the Office of the Attorney General is currently reviewing and handling the contract dispute. I'm wondering if you might give us a little bit more information about that, or those two separate inquiries, and maybe further, Lucia, without getting into names or specifics. Representative Fecto has mentioned sexual misconduct and harassment issues, which don't appear in the summary document for reasons that I probably would agree are obvious. But can you comment at all, generically or otherwise, on what you know and what those two independent inquiries are looking at specifically? Thank you.
Sure. I don't know a lot about either of them, but I will tell you what I do know. Most of this, at this stage, we are receiving the request and just getting publicly available information. And we can certainly potentially follow up with additional information requests if you wish. So it is my understanding that DAFS hired a third party earlier this year. I don't know the exact time frame of this. It is not a publicly available document to my knowledge, the results of this independent evaluation. It was reported in the press that they had, and I believe also in other communications, that DAFS did have this reviewed. They hired someone else to look at the performance of Workday, and that when they got those results and communicated those, that was earlier in 2021, and that led to where we are now. I do not know the name of the contractor. I do not have the report. That's what I know about this. In terms of the Office of the Attorney General, again, I can't comment on any of the specifics, and I don't really have any of the specifics, except that now I do know that DAFS has initiated a notice of termination with a request for repayment, and that has been elevated or referred to the Office of the Attorney General, as now this is a legal contracting matter between the state and the vendor. And so that is in the purview of the Office of the Attorney General. And I do not have any further information on that. The question about the question of sexual misconduct, I also have no additional information on that. And it was my understanding, Representative Fecteau can correct me if I'm wrong, that in follow-up communication that he had with me, the focus of his request to the GOC was focused on the fiscal and contract management issues.
Representative Fecteau, is that a fair assessment of the change in the request from the 4th to the 10th?
And so I was informed that this committee, it wasn't really in the purview of this committee to handle such sexual misconduct HR type of requests. So that's why it is the majority of my request to this committee is a fiscal concern. Not to say that the other request isn't valid or super important, because it is. I just was under the assumption that that was not under the purview of this committee.
Thank you. Next in the queue is Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to Representative Fecteau for bringing this matter to the committee. I'm a new member of the committee, so I'm learning the processes, but I'm grateful for this, and this is just the sort of inquiry that I was hoping that we would be pursuing, and which is one of the reasons I requested this committee. It's been 6 years since the original bid went out to fix this broken system, outdated system. And I think, the public has a legitimate inquiry as to two administrations seem to have had problems with this. And I would like to, I think this is demanding legislative oversight at some level. And obviously we've just scratched the surface, but I'd be in favor of digging a little deeper. Thanks.
Further questions or comments? Senator Keim.
Thank you. And I also agree with Senator Bennett. Thank you, Representative Fecteau, for bringing this forward. I think it is important that we look at this. I mean, just as a surface look, the timeliness of not sort of capturing the issue sooner, and that's where I think we need to look first, is why was this seeming to go on, be ongoing, that an entity we contracted with as a state were not fulfilling their obligations, and yet it is ongoing. And so I think it is worth our looking into, however that may be.
Further comments or questions? Representative Fecto, I have one or two questions. In your second letter to us, you provide a number of areas where you're seeking some additional information from DAFs. I understand you had some conversation at the committee level with DAFs during the supplemental budget process. My question is, have you made these requests for information in writing to DAFs since that supplemental budget hearing?
Thank you, Senator. Dr. Nixon did reach out to me almost immediately after I believe it was March 9th. And so I was under the understanding that this was the appropriate process to go through, and filling out the OPEGA form after I reached out to the Government Oversight Committee. So I thought I was following procedure by just going through this official form after reaching out to Government Oversight. So I didn't want to muddy up the waters by then directly contacting DAFs if this was the formal procedure to do that. So no.
I did not intend the question to be critical of your process. It was simply to understand the approach you've taken. Part of why I asked the question is to gather information in the most efficient way possible. And I think before we task, our limited staff resources in OPEGA with doing a bunch of legwork and research and information, we just try to exhaust all the other options for gathering the materials that are sought by members. So that was the purpose of the question. You had also said in your letter dated March 10th that you have asked others with knowledge of the program about the history of the program. Are those individuals that would be able to provide information either in writing to you, in writing to OPEGA, or is it the sort of situation where these individuals would prefer confidentiality?
It is my understanding that most of these individuals would like to remain confidential. I've asked some of them to submit formal complaints, mostly on the sexual misconduct side. But right now I've been given no indication that they want to participate in an open matter as it concerns this. They would prefer a confidential HR matter as it concerns the other side of this issue that I bring forward.
And your primary concern is a financial and contract oversight concern, as I understand the reading of your letter. Is that fair to say that's your primary concern, and the request you're making of OPEGA, the HR matters are not in our purview, and that you would agree that the Attorney General being involved in contract dispute and litigation, that piece is also not part of your request to us?
That is correct. I'm finding out new information even this morning as we move along. So yes, that's accurate.
So I guess I would throw out as a suggestion, if it sounds like the committee is interested in trying to gather some more information here, and perhaps a starting point would be for the chairs to send a letter to DAFs summarizing some of the requests that Representative Fecto has made. We can draft and transmit that letter on behalf of the committee and ask that they respond, provide documents, and if appropriate, participate in a committee discussion at the next meeting or the meeting following. It's sort of a half step to take. It's not committing fully to have OPEGA staff divert their attention from other projects we've tasked with them. It's more of a shorter step to try to get some information headed our way. So I wanted to throw that out on the table to see what committee members thought of that. Representative McDonald?
I certainly support writing a letter to DAFs, and then I would ask in that letter to include some of the history, the back history to how we got to where we are. I mean, there's a such thing as bad luck, right? Sometimes multiple contractors don't work out, but I would like to know those reasons at this point, because this has been ongoing for quite some time. And frankly, I would like to pay my dental insurance for the year. So I would like to see finally something get implemented here.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Arata.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I was in that budget committee meeting or AFA meeting where Representative Fecto requested information. So I feel that he's already taken that step and it wasn't really sufficient. I wonder if there's another level we could take this to. Wasn't a preliminary investigation by OPEGA another option? I just hate to keep kicking this down the road, this can down the road. I'd like to have a little more heft to our request. Or was a preliminary investigation, that was an option, right? You made your list.
It is an option, Representative Arata. In my view, in my experience, we sort of try to do. We escalate our tactics depending on the responses we get. And so in my view, the GOC writing the letter is an escalation step. And certainly we have investigative powers, we have subpoena powers. Those are really reserved when we're not getting anywhere. So I personally view my suggestion as an escalation step to try to get the documents we need to make a decision on whether to put this on the work plan. That's my opinion on it.
Thank you.
Representative McDonald?
I certainly would echo wanting to dig deeper into this, but I wonder if a letter might have a quicker turnaround. I like to get information relatively quickly. And so I'm hopeful that if we started with a letter and sent that we may receive a response within, 1 to 2 weeks. No more than that, or it would come, we only meet every 2 weeks. So the next time we'd have an opportunity to discuss it would be within hopefully the month, and then escalate it from there if need be. I don't know what I'm a new member, so I don't know if a preliminary investigation would take longer to receive a response to.
So I saw Senator Bennett, followed by Senator Timberlake, and then Representative Stover.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be amenable to your suggestion, Mr. Chairman, but I do think that in such a letter, I think we should make clear that we expect a quick answer to the inquiries so that we can address this at our next meeting, which means, not getting a letter, 2 weeks and 1 day from now, but really getting a quick response, and then we can, at the next meeting, act accordingly.
I appreciate that suggestion, Senator Bennett. Thank you, and would agree. Senator Timberlake, did you have a question? You're on mute. You've never sounded better. You're still on mute. It was a joke, of course. It was a joke, of course, for a good friend. No audio? Okay. Representative Stover is next. We'll come back to Senator Timberlake if he's able to fix his audio.
I think Senator Bennett covered what I was going to cover, so I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Senator DeChambeau.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Nixon commented about DAF had just hired an independent review and then continued saying that may not be public. I'd like to have something more definitive on that. What we can find out about that independent review, when they may have hired someone, because dates mean something. So that's my question.
Certainly include that in the letter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator DeChambeau. Representative Millett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also concur with your suggested approach and the importance of illustrating a quick turnaround. When thinking at the chronology that Lucia's prepared, it reminds me that this was first authorized in the 2014 legislative session, leading to a request in fiscal 15. We're now looking at 6 biennia where money has been authorized, somewhat expended, still deferred, borrowing occurred, and we're still not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So the importance of getting to the financial certainty and circumstances and some indication of when closure can come, I think is very important to include in the letter.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Timberlake.
Well, thank you. I was lucky enough to have IT right out in the hall working on Heather's computer, and something had gone wrong with the mic. Folks have pretty well said it all since I've been muted, and you're right. I'm always sound better when I'm on mute. My daughter and my wife would agree with you 100%. So, I just think this is important for all the reasons that have been said. And I think it's a little discouraging that it's taken this long to get to the bottom of it. And I just agree with Representative McDonald that I want to pay my dental insurance in one big payment. And I'm sick of trying to remember to send in the $7 or $20 or whatever it is every month my wife has to do. So, but there's no reason for this, and this is a scam that's going on, and we need to find a solution.
Thank you, Senator Timberlake. Further comments or questions from the committee? Lucia, do you feel like you have what you need to help us draft a letter?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I think now would be an appropriate time for a motion directing the chairs to transmit the letter to DAFs on this subject. I think we understand the scope of the letter. It's largely based on Representative Fecto's request, as well as the other points that have been raised during this conversation. I've not heard any objection to any of those requests. So I think the staff are capable of pulling that letter together. So a simple motion would be in order. Senator Bennett has moved.
Seconded.
Senator Timberlake has seconded. Any further discussion? Is the committee ready for the question? Etta, please call the roll.
Senator Libby?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Bailey?
Yes.
Yes. Senator DeChambeau?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Keim?
Oh,
Senator
sorry.
Timberlake?
Yes.
Senator Keim
Senator
informed
Bennett?
us that she was leaving committee, and I should have passed that on.
Senator Timberlake?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Bennett?
Yes.
Yes. Representative McDonald?
Yes.
Yes. Representative O'Neill?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Stover?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Dillingham? Absent. Representative Millet?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Arata?
Yes.
Yes. 10 yes, 2 absent.
Motion carries. Thank you, Representative Fecto, for joining us today and for your presentation. And we will look forward to our next steps together.
Thank you, Senator. I hope I appreciate the committee's time. And while I know you were unable to really handle the sexual misconduct allegations, but I think sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I think everyone will be on their best behaviors, or at least hopefully, while I search other avenues to remedy that situation. Thank you very much to the committee.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is an update on Child Protective Services project work. This will be an update from OPEGA staff. And for this, I'll recognize Lucia Nixon.
Thank you very much. You have in the materials distributed to you a several-page memo that that Amy Gagne and I worked on together to update you on the various work that OPEGA has been doing at the direction of the GOC related to Child Protective Services and as administered by DHHS, and specifically you'll hear the acronym OCFS at times, which is the Office of Child and Family Services. That's the part of the state Health and Human Services Department that has oversight over Child Protective Services. The memo gives you background and update information with the hope of giving you what you need to determine the next steps of where you want to go with work in this area. So just to give you a quick background of the timeline. So in 2018, in the spring, OPEGA conducted a case study of how the Child Protective Services system functioned in 2 cases of child death by abuse. And OPEGA delivered an information brief to the GOC. That was a quick turnaround project that was done between March and May of 2018. After considering the information brief, the GOC decided that it was interested in understanding the factors that impact the efficiency and effectiveness of workers that are on the front lines of Child Protective Services in the state, and directed OPEGA to conduct a special project that would assess frontline workers' perspectives. And OPEGA conducted a survey with interviews as well to really get the perspectives of those frontline workers, and delivered a report to the GOC in February of 2019. And after considering that report and what you learned at the time about Child Protective Services frontline workers, the GOC identified 2 potential areas of interest for additional work. First of all, there was a strong interest at the time of doing a follow-up survey of the frontline workers. However, it was too close to the first survey to actually embark on that at the time. And so that was sort of been put on the back burner until to revisit at an appropriate time lapse from an initial survey. And second, one thing that came out of the survey that got the attention of the GOC was the issue of out-of-home placements of children removed from their homes by the state, and getting a better understanding of the availability and type of placements, and issues related to foster parent recruitment, retention, training, and the like. The GOC did get some updates from the Department of Health and Human Services during the spring and fall of 2019. It turns out that the department had contracted with a evaluation firm, the Public Consulting Group, to do an in-depth evaluation of the child welfare system in the state, as well as also the children's mental health system. And DHHS got its first major report from that consulting group doing the evaluation in July of 2019. And there was a huge wealth of recommendations and proposed initiatives and work that was flowing from the results of that outside evaluation. And considering then we're now at sort of the fall of 2019, the GOC took into consideration all the initiatives and work that was going on in DHHS as their response to the evaluation that they had conducted and their efforts in strategic planning. The GOC directed OPEGA to pause its work at that time to allow time for the planned strategic changes to be implemented. It wasn't an appropriate juncture to be evaluating, given that a bunch of strategic initiatives were being rolled out. That was in September of 2019. So it was put on hold for a year with the thought, give a year for things to get implemented. OPEGA can be in touch with DHHS, monitor some monthly data metrics. So it was on hold from November 2019 through the fall of 2020. And as we all know, during that time, the COVID pandemic arrived and had significant implications for the delivery of services by DHHS and everyone else and how we conduct our work. So it was also a year of significant change, not only in DHHS implementing their strategies, but also then facing challenges presented by the pandemic. So in the last couple of months, OPEGA's gone back and revisited the work that has been done over this period of a couple of years, the pause that was set in place in the fall of 2019, and also considering, as I mentioned, the changes and adaptations experienced beginning a year ago with the arrival of COVID-19. We met with the OCFS Director Landry. We have also monitored some monthly data, as I mentioned. And we've evaluated whether this would be an appropriate time for a follow-up survey now that time has elapsed several years. So based on the information available, it is apparent that OCFS has made some progress in some of the areas related to out-of-home placements, even amidst the pandemic. However, it also appears that the agency's efforts in those areas were disrupted by the pandemic and its implications on the court system and foster parent recruitment and retention and the needs of families during this period. We do think that it would be one thing the GOC could consider if you wish to do further work in this area at this time. And I think this is a good time to take stock and the GOC can have a discussion and consideration of where you want to go. We would offer as possible avenues that you might want to consider if you do want to do more work in this area would be, you could direct OPEGA to proceed with a follow-up survey at this juncture of looking at gathering frontline workers' perspectives. It could have similar focus to the initial survey, or that could be tweaked or amended to focus on areas of particular concern. And the other item we wanted to put out there was potentially the GOC could request that OCFS Director Dr. Landry appear before the Government Oversight Committee to provide updates on the agency's ongoing initiatives and the current status of work there.
Thank you, Lucia. Are there questions or comments from the committee? Representative Arata.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The supplemental budget included over $2.5 million of general fund and over $2.6 million of federal funds for the Comprehensive Child Welfare Information System. And I know in the past we've been frustrated by that taking so long to implement. I was wondering if it's now implemented, if there's going to be more, if we should look for more expenses down the road. I'm curious about what's going on with that. So that would be, I think all of us, I think Senator Libby was interested in that as well in the past, expressed some frustration. Also, there was it seems like the pendulum swings, right? With regard to reporting child welfare cases. There was the case of a family in Cumberland a little over a year ago, I think, that almost lost an ill child that to the system, and the court-appointed special advocate had to intervene and stop that from happening. I'd like to know what is the department doing to prevent that type of error from occurring again? And so those are my two questions. And yes, I would like to see the director come before our committee again for an update. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Stover.
Thank you. Thank you for this. I think both of those recommendations are very good. To the first, and I do sit on HHS, and I think most of you know that. I think to the first bullet, doing an additional survey to sort of update where things have been since the pandemic, because there's no way that the pandemic was a significant interruption to everything, and there's a lot of unknowns. But what this updating the survey to look at what actually is going on now, that we're sort of seeing little steps of hope, but were the situations that were there pre-pandemic been addressed in the eyes of the caseworker, and what are the situations that are facing them now, especially with, I don't think it was this committee, but we've heard that the courts are going to be overwhelmed and inundated as soon as they're able to open up again. And what does that mean for so many of these cases that have been backed up because of the pandemic? So I guess that's my long way of saying I'd like to support that survey again, and also an update from Dr. Landry. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Millett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I concur with both of the observations and comments of Representatives Arata and Stover. I appreciate the work that OPEGA staff have been doing. I think we would all agree that the well-being of children whose family circumstances are lacking and are subject to abuse and neglect is high on our priority list. I do have confidence that Director Landry is headed in the right direction. And as Representative Rada mentioned, we have given financial support for increased caseworkers and the system that's being developed. So I like the two recommendations from the staff. I feel the survey would be a valuable tool to see what has changed during the pandemic, if conditions have improved, and if the caseworkers being surveyed feel that changes are in the offing. I like particularly the last sentence in that bulleted piece where GOC, where OPEGA could advise us on whether further evaluation work, whether it's focused on out-of-home placement or other areas, would help us to get that into the neck of the funnel. And certainly I would appreciate one more return from Governor Landry, Director Landry, to give us an update. So I would be prepared, Senator, to make a motion that we accept the recommendations outlined by the OPEGA staff and urge action in accordance with both strategies.
Thank you, Representative Millett. That's a motion made and seconded by Representative Stover. Further questions or comments from the committee? I would just note, I also support the recommendations that have been prepared by staff. For the newer members of the committee, GOC has invested significant resources into Child Protective Services research, survey, and investigation. There have been a number of reports and briefs that have been published. I definitely encourage the new members to review those ahead of a conversation with Dr. Landry. I do think that would be a good use of time so that we can focus our questions on the very essential policy pieces that we need some information on. So are there any other comments or questions? Is the committee ready for the question? Etta, would you call the roll? Oh,
will.
I'm sorry, Etta. Hold just a moment, please.
Yeah,
Senator-
I'm only,
Senator
thank you.
DeChambeau.
Thank you. Would someone please repeat the motion before I vote? Thanks.
Sure. As I understand it, the motion is that we will direct the OPEGA staff to begin a second follow-up survey of frontline child protective service workers. That's the action item that we're going to be directing OPEGA staff to do. The results of that survey work may trigger additional steps in that process related to out-of-home placement or other matters. And then the second part of the motion is a request for the director of the Office of Child Family Services, Director Landry, to attend a committee hearing where we can have a back and forth discussion about current matters. The director can provide us an update of implementation of strategic initiatives and how the COVID pandemic has impacted their operations.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Further questions or comments from the committee? Last call. Etta, please call the roll.
Senator Libby.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Bailey. Senator DeChambeau.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Keim. Senator Timberlake.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Bennett.
Yes.
Yes. Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Yes. Representative O'Neill. Representative Stover.
Yes.
Yes. Representative Dillingham. Representative Millet.
Yes.
Yes. Representative Arata.
Yes.
Yes. 8 yes. 4 absent.
Motion carries. Thank you. Our next agenda item is very much related to this current one. We've invited Christine Alberi to attend our meeting this morning. Christine serves as the state's child welfare ombudsman. She has been, I think, her and her office have been helpful to us in our work around child protective services evaluation. Her office produces an annual report, and so we've invited her here today to walk through her findings with us and provide any additional information or answer questions the committee members may have. So with that, welcome, Ms. Alberi. Nice to see you again.
Hi, nice to see you too. Thank you. I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of that. Are you all set for me to present my report?
Please
Yes,
do.
wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, Senator Libby, and members of the committee. So I'd like to first start, if I may, with just explaining a little bit about how our office works, just give a little bit of an overview, and then I can get into some of the details of the report, and then I'm happy to answer any questions, of course. So the Child Welfare Ombudsman was formed as part of the child welfare reforms in 2001. We're actually in the Child Protective Statute, Title 22 4087-A. We have a couple of different functions that the statute requires. And I think just one thing that gets overlooked a lot, one of the things that we do is we provide information and referral calls for the public. So anyone can call us. We get, as you can imagine, the most calls from parents, second most from grandparents, and on from there. I mean, we get calls from anyone, and anyone is welcome to call and at least talk through their child welfare case, or, you know, talk about children that they're worried about. For the information and referral calls, which, you know, I think half our time is spent on the phone with people, we can talk through the case, provide information on policies and procedures, on who to talk to next, the supervisor's name in a case that folks are involved with. and where they might go if we can't help them. And I should back up when I say we. So last year we were fortunate enough to get a little bit of extra funding, so we were able to actually hire an associate ombudsman, Ashley McAllister, who has been a great addition. And so, there are two of us now doing this work, which is fantastic. She is actually a former child protective and permanency worker and quality assurance worker from the Office of Child and Family Services. So that's been great. So we do a lot of those information and referral calls. And then for a smaller number of people who call us, we can actually open a case for a review. And so these are the case-specific reviews referenced in the statute. So what we do is we decide whether or not to open a case just based on 1 or 2 phone calls or communications with someone who calls us with a complaint about what child welfare is doing in their case. We send that complaint on to the program administrator in the case of the relevant district office of child welfare. And then we get all the records that are relevant to review, and we write a report. That report goes back to the department for them to review, and we come to an agreement on the recommendations in the report. So those reports are what my annual report is based on. So the findings in those reports. So we are in a unique position. There are very few people outside of DHHS who can actually review all of the records involved in some of these cases. I know OPEGA has done that, but it is unusual, and so we're lucky enough to be able to do that, so we can make some of these informed recommendations. And then the third piece of what we do is make recommendations to the department, to the legislature, and to the governor's office about how things are going and what needs to change within the child welfare system. So it's important to note that we don't have any enforcement authority. Everything that we do is by agreement with the department. The law is very clear right now that we are supposed to sort of try to mediate between the department and complainants, and try and help resolve disputes in that way. And so that having been said, and I can certainly stop me anytime, I can certainly answer any questions about the process. But so as I said, we take all of the reports that we've reviewed, and then we use those reports to sort of try to spot trends and make recommendations about changes to the whole system. There are always cases that are strange outliers or things that don't quite fit into the normal course of the practice issues that we see. And so those don't usually have a big impact on the annual report, but they're just more, one-time situations. So that's why some of the, the cases that you see in the report that are summarized are not necessarily all the cases that we've, talked about with the department about over the course of the year. So this is a little bit of a tough annual report. I know that everyone has been focused on child welfare ever since Marissa Kennedy and Kendall Chick died 3 years ago. And there have been a lot of, great reforms and changes, but I think, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And unfortunately, we've found this year that the department continues to struggle with practice issues and decision-making around sort of 2 crucial points in child welfare cases. The first is the very beginning of the case, when child welfare first gets involved, when making the decision whether or not to remove a child from parents, basically whether or not that child is safe during the initial child protective investigation. That's one area that is still somewhat problematic. And then the other area where we're seeing some issues is at the end of the case, at the other end of the case. Basically making the decision whether the child will be safe in the home once reunified with parents. So a child is taken into state custody, parents have a reunification plan that they have to follow. DHHS has to make a recommendation to the court about whether or not that child can go back home to the parents at the end of the case, or whether they want to pursue termination of the parents' rights. That decision point is really, really complicated. Sometimes it's hard to tell. And so we've seen a lot of practice issues around that area. Now, the first one, these are some of the same the same issues that we've seen for quite some time. They're just sort of basic investigation practice issues at the beginning of the case. So some examples of those are not recognizing risk when the evidence is clear. So in other words, the caseworker has collected lots of evidence that shows that the children are not safe in the home, or without some other kind of intervention or safety plan, and there's no intervention after that. There are basic investigation practices that are not completed. A parent or caregiver's history warrants a thorough investigation that was not done, and the questions are not tailored to the issues. Safety plans are made and not monitored. And I can talk a little bit about safety plans in a second. Children and parents are not seen regularly during an open assessment or safety plan, and children are left without legal protection. The initial month, so child protective investigations last 35 days. Sometimes they're longer, sometimes they're shorter, but that's what the policy says. It's a really crucial time to determine not only the immediate safety of the child, but also it really determines the course of the rest of the case. If issues aren't identified early on, sometimes they're not addressed throughout the case as well. Practice issues early can really make a huge impact on children over the course of months or years. I just want to say a little bit about safety planning. So safety planning is a practice that means many different things. For a long time, the department did what were called out-of-home safety plans. So, an investigation would be opened, the children would be removed from the home and sent temporarily to a relative's home or some other, a neighbor's home or something like that. And then the idea is to give the department time to investigate and see whether or not there's really something going on or if the kids could go home. The problem with that in the past is that those plans tended to stretch on for months and months and months and not be monitored. So in 2018, that practice was ended. But that causes other problems, because then the department has to make these sort of snap decisions right at the beginning of the case if it looks like something really bad is going on. So I know they're working on something now, talking about maybe having just shorter term safety plans or something like that. The other type of safety plans that happen still that can be longer term, that can be an important tool, are, having the kids actually go with one of their parents somewhere else. So out of an unsafe home, away from an unsafe partner, or something like that. So safety planning is a really important tool, and when used well, it can be really effective. But I think it over the years it can cause problems where court intervention provides additional protection. So there still have been some issues with that we've seen. And then even more complicated than the initial investigation, and I cannot emphasize how complex the work of child welfare is for caseworkers to really make these decisions and try and figure out what to do with each family. But what's really difficult, like I said, is how do you tell at the end of a case or at any time during a case whether the kids are safe to go home to the parents, or whether it's time to try to have the court terminate the parents' rights or some other permanency plan for the children. So some of the issues, again, this is all just sort of practice issues. For example, and there are other times in an open case as well that we've seen some issues. For example, how do you make the decision whether or not the visits need to be supervised? Sometimes they're supervised when they don't need to be. Sometimes the visit supervision is lifted before it should be. How do you make those really difficult decisions that affect the safety of children? In order to make those decisions, some things that are really important that sometimes we don't see are meaningful contacts with parents. So the policy says, meet with parents once a month, but how that happens and whether it's not once a month is less important than whether or not the caseworker is really talking to the parents and really getting a sense of where they are and who they're hanging out with and what's going on in their lives. So meeting with the parents, making sure that parents' significant others are thoroughly assessed. We saw a lot of that this year where, a new partner would enter the picture and there'd be, maybe a background check, but in terms of the actual safety of that that person was not really well assessed. Talking to service providers periodically throughout the case, including and especially giving service providers objective information at the outset of a case. So letting a parent's therapist know what the issues that DHHS sees are. In cases of substance use, completing pill counts and random drug screens. In cases involving mental health issues, again, pill counts where appropriate and contacting all providers. Providing visit and transition plans that provide meaningful information about parents' abilities to care for the child. So making sure that, you have information about how the parent actually is parenting, with the child when they're actually, visiting. Setting up trial placements with supports and services in place that will allow the placements to succeed, and thoroughly monitoring trial placements. Trial placements are when a child is still in state custody, but the department and the guardian ad litem and the courts have all sort of agreed that it's time to try to have the child go home. But because the child's still in the department's custody, there needs to be monitoring. They need to make sure there's supports. And so then that way, if things go bad, they can just take the child right out of there quickly. But if things go well, they are sort of a track record of, that things are going to be okay for this family. That's another sort of point that we found practice issues at, is just the monitoring of trial placements. So trial placement policy is very specific, unannounced visits to the home, the caseworkers have to go to the home a certain number of times. And again, it's less about following the letter of the policy and just more about do you have enough information that you can be assured that you know basically what's going on in the home? And I think sometimes we get to an end of a case and we say, this is great, the parents are doing well, this is now we don't have to worry about these children anymore, they're home. But it's actually a time when I think the danger is higher, because you don't really know until the children go home to the parents. So it's, and the other piece of, we're talking about reunification, children going home to parents. The other piece of this is that sometimes if the department has not done sort of really good, thorough, ongoing assessment of a case, there isn't enough information to prove to the court that the child's rights should be, or the parent's rights should be terminated. So, a lot of it, obviously it's all about the safety of the child, but if you get to the end of the case and you file the petition to terminate the parent's rights, and then you go before the court and the parents are contesting that, then you can't prove to the court that it's not going to be safe, even though you sort of know it. So then that just delays permanency for the child. And sometimes, the child is then sent home when they probably should not be. So again, it sounds complicated because it is. And I think that's where, again, this year, we're really strongly recommending training for caseworkers, training for supervisors is hugely important. The department is partnering with the Muskie School right now to do the new caseworker training. I think that's good, but it's really the ongoing training. And I think you found that in the OPEGA reports that you did in 2018, that was something that caseworkers were really asking for. Ongoing training and ongoing support, and making sure that the caseworkers have enough time to do their jobs. All just it's all continues to be really, really important for all this going forward. And I know I've thrown a lot of information at you really quickly. I want to just draw your attention to one of the most difficult parts of this report, which is there's a case that I summarized on, I think it's page 15, where an infant died after the older sibling had been reunified with the parents. And this is the thing about this case. Like I said before, there are cases that are outliers. The thing about this case is that this case was very difficult, but the practice issues and the issues in the parents of this case were not outliers. This case could have happened in any district in the state, and the sort of patterns of behavior or patterns of casework practice issues in this case are just really common. So, fortunately, most of the time, this does not happen. So I'm not saying this is going to happen tomorrow, and I hope it doesn't, but just so you understand, it was really, it was nothing, there was nothing in there that was particularly surprising to me in terms of practice issues or even the parents' behavior or their own underlying issues. I've been talking really fast for a while, and I would love to answer any questions and nowhere else, what other information you'd like to hear from me.
Thank you, Ms. Alberry, for your presentation. We'll get to committee questions and comments here in a moment, but I just wanted to start off with two. In your report, you noted that the quality and frequency of training opportunities, in your view, was not adequate. The department pretty strenuously objected to that claim, saying that they are doing more than they ever have been. My question is, have you or any of your staff been able to sit in or review curriculum? Do you have a finger on the pulse of what that looks like? I mean, I can imagine a situation where a training might be called, a 1 hour webinar might be called a training, where you really don't have a sense of folks' engagement or the benefit they're getting out of it. So can you speak to that qualitative piece at all?
Sure. So it's interesting. I mean, I don't, as it's apparent in the report, we do have a bit of a disagreement on this. I think that, so a lot of the new trainings that they're referencing have to do with, for example, so there's something called an SDM tool that the department uses to, they started implementing them way back in 2017, 2016 in the intake, and now they're throughout the case. Basically what it is it's a sort of questionnaire where the caseworker will enter information. It'll say, enter information relating to the risk to the child. And there's one at the intake level, one at the beginning of the case, and then there's a couple through, and I can't remember exactly how, there's one that they use now that just this fall went into effect through the reunification portion of the case to assess risk. And basically, the caseworker enters the information and it spits out a number. And these are actually, I have no problem with these. These are useful tools for sure. Although it does matter, the caseworker gathering the information can affect the accuracy of the tool. So a lot of the trainings that they're talking about have to do with that. So some of those new, tool implementation trainings, I don't think there are not, I mean, and we've had a back and forth about this, obviously, there aren't really any ongoing trainings about the basic things that I'm talking about here. There are plenty of trainings about many different things. The supervisor training hasn't really changed or has not changed, except again, there are some pieces because there have been some new policies and tools that have gone into effect. So yes, there are new trainings about that. I don't, again, they are working on this. This is something they're working on with the Muskie School. So I don't think they necessarily disagree that there needs to be different trainings. To answer your question about whether or not we are sitting in on some of these curriculum discussions, the answer to that is no right now. So we would like to. We are more than willing to, they're also, the other thing that the department is doing is revamping all of the policies. So every single policy is being worked through right now. Which is, again, not a bad thing. But in terms of policies and trainings, no, we have not, we haven't really been asked. We would like to. We actively would like to be involved, especially on the permanency side of things, as well as the initial assessment part of it.
Thank you. My second question, and then I'll finish. In your report regarding the infant who passed away recently, you indicated that there is no mechanism for OCFS to notify your department or allow you to do an investigation. Are you requesting that you have that authority, and that be a statutory change?
That would be a statutory change, yes, and is certainly something I mean, I would love to see whether it's a statutory change or not. I would love to have more information because I tend to sort of stumble across these cases. You know, somebody else involved in the case had notified me of this case. So it wasn't something the department said, hey, you know, can you take a look at this, that kind of thing. And so I don't know, you know, I do request data periodically, but it's not but yeah, I don't get that information. Now, the organization that does get that information is the Serious Injury and Death Review Panel. And I know they are working on sort of redoing how they do their work. And I don't know when their last report was a while ago, so I'm not sure what the situation is with them right now. But they do those reviews and are also supposed to be, you know, reporting in that area as well. But no, I don't get that information.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions or comments from the committee? Representative Arata.
Thank you, and thank you for being here today electronically with us. I was wondering if some of the issues that you mentioned could be due to high turnover. There was a problem with high turnover in the department in the past, which of course leads to inexperience. Also, the computer system that you know, we've put more money into that. I'd like to know, was that money well spent? Is it helping, or is it still on its way to being implemented?
Sure. So the first part of your question, I mean, there has been a lot of turnover. There's no question. There always is. There's nothing. This is not a problem that's easily solved in child welfare because the job is so difficult and sort of heartbreaking and not for everyone. So there's always going to be turnover among the casework staff. The other thing that's happened is that because, and this is a good thing, but you know, it takes a while to catch up, because so many new caseworkers and supervisors were hired as part of the expansion of staff that occurred back in 2018, and then again a little bit later as well. That meant that now there are, you know, a lot of new supervisors and a lot of brand new caseworkers, more so than would be in a normal year. So for sure, I'm sure that has something to do with this. And then to answer the second part of your question, so the new computer system is definitely needed. I mean, the old one is, because I have access to it as well. That's how I get a lot of the records. It's really, really difficult to use, and it's slow and it's ancient, and they have a hard time updating the software. The new computer system is sort of a separate issue, though. It's a great tool and it's absolutely necessary, but it's not going to improve these practice issues. And then also, it has not been implemented yet. They are still working on it. I'm not sure how far away they are.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for Ms. Alberry, Representative Stover.
Thank you for being here. I had one question. Given all of this information that you've provided to us, I had brought up earlier that we have heard, because I do serve in HHS, we've heard that the courts being closed is going to be a significant factor really when they reopen because of the backlog and the amount of work that will be needed to be completed and done. Do you see that as a factor if caseworkers are going to be spending an awful lot of time, which is what it sounds like, what I've heard, trying to catch up with where things were left off, and how are they going to balance those things? Or are they going to need different resources to do that?
So it's interesting. I mean, I can't really speak for the courts and what their scheduling is going to be, but since the very beginning of the COVID restrictions, the courts and the department have been working together to make sure that child welfare cases keep happening. So for example, even in the strictest lockdown in those first couple of months, the courts were doing, you know, adoptions and those kinds of things even then. So, and all throughout, you know, the summer and the fall, like they've been doing all kinds of, you know, essentially there have been delays, but it hasn't been as bad as it has been, for example, for family matters cases, which I know have pretty much came to a halt for a long time. So, and even criminal cases, because the child welfare cases don't have to deal with juries and other things that make things more complicated with COVID. So they have been, I haven't heard that that is going to be a huge issue when courts sort of fully open back up for everyone, except that I'm sure, just like anything, I mean, when the courts don't have a lot of time, you know, everything is going to be a little bit more delayed. But I don't know that that's the biggest issue that they're necessarily facing. I do think, and just a little bit off your question, but I do think COVID in general is something that none of us really know yet what the sort of long-term effect that's going to have on the department or on children and, you know, children involved in child welfare. You know, the caseworkers have been doing, I mean, as all of us have found that it's a lot more difficult during COVID to get even some of the most basic things done. You know, they haven't been working in the office. They, you know, it just, everything takes a little bit longer. You know, anything paperwork related is really complicated. So that's actually the part that I'm more concerned about. Just, you know, what has been missed, you know, what investigations took a little bit too long because of COVID. And again, I don't think that's anything any of us are really going to know the full effects of until, you know, down the road a little bit. This annual report is not, I very carefully did not, especially during that 2-month lockdown, there were lots of issues, of course, you know, when things came to a halt. Anything related to COVID, I certainly didn't sort of hold against the department or anything like that. I think next year's annual report is going to be more interesting because it's all during COVID, and, you know, we'll see what happens, but it's certainly a concern.
Thank you. I think I share your concerns that sort of the unintended consequences across the board of COVID are going to show up post-COVID, and it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. So thank you very much.
Other questions or comments from the committee? Senator DeChambeau.
Thank you. I'll lower my hand. I'm trying to decide what I want to say first. First of all, I will say that I've been in meetings with Dr. Landry, and I am very impressed with his commitment, his knowledge, willingness to cooperate. And I just wanted to say that. Senator Libby asked about, in the event, or maybe by statute, we could change something that if, let's say, a death or something very serious, close to death, occurred, whether your department, your office, your agency, your whatever, I don't know what to call you.
Nobody does.
Okay, your oversight would be available or should be to review. My question, and I've had some follow-ups, my question is, when something like this occurs, do you know if the department conducts a case review and a debriefing and a report, that at least that would be available to you and should be without you having to find out by someone else? It should be routine. Could you answer to that?
Sure. So I know that they do. I mean, they internally review cases all the time. I don't know what exactly the process is, or if there's a written report. I don't know exactly what the nature of that is. So no, I'm not privy to that information, and they don't notify me of when they're doing that, when they have a case that is, you know, a serious injury or something like that.
Fine. I think that that's something I want to ponder. It seems your function, your role is something that should include, and that gives the big picture. I think you were very good at pointing out some of the cases that caseworkers went above and beyond. And I thank you for that. For someone who started as a social worker 50 years ago, I can't believe that, for the state, things have changed dramatically. It was time for me to leave when the training had to do with how to conduct a risk assessment tool on the computer. What was lacking was dialogue with a supervisor and a manager. And I think you can disagree with me. I don't mind. I want to know. Every caseworker that has a case becomes an independent contractor unless they have a very good supervisor who reviews the cases, and two, a very good manager who reviews the supervisor's work. And from what I read today, that seems to go out somehow. And that really reflects the morale and the turnover when you feel you're all by yourself as a caseworker. So I'm sorry there's no question in there, but I feel better saying it. So thank you very much.
That's okay. And I will say, I mean, I've recommended for several years now that the supervisors need training and support. I mean, there are so many excellent caseworkers and supervisors in the department. There's so much knowledge that's already there. It's all right there. It just needs to be harnessed in a way that, you know, sort of everyone can access it and all the supervisors can, you know, feel supported themselves and support their caseworker. So I absolutely agree with you.
That's the best training, is dialogue with someone who has institutional knowledge. Thank you.
Further comments or questions from the committee? Seeing none, Ms. Alberti, thank you for your time today. Of course, thank you for all the work you do and for the annual report. It's a very helpful resource for us, and I think for me personally, I'll be using that during our conversation with Dr. Landry to help frame up some of the questions I have. You know, some of the other committee members will as well. So if there are no other comments or questions, we will, again, thank you for your time and your input today and your work on behalf of all Mainers. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay. So the last item on our agenda under new business is the 2021-2022 OPEGA work plan. However, a couple of our items that are in unfinished business, I think, pertain to that conversation. So if there is no objection, I'd like to take up the tab number 7 item, the Blueberry Commission, and tab number 8, the MCILS piece out of order, and then come back to the work plan. Any objection to that course of action? Okay. Seeing none, I'd like to do the MCILS Part 1 report back first. We have invited the state auditor to participate in this conversation as well, so I'll admit him to the meeting now. I would like to recognize Director Nixon to provide us an update, and we'll, I think, have some discussion with Auditor Dunlap. So, Director Nixon, please proceed.
Thank you very much. So as you know, in February, the GOC asked OPEGA to perform some targeted follow-up work related to the MCILS Maine Commission on Indigent Legal Services report that OPEGA issued in November of 2020. And the focus of that targeted follow-up work that was requested was to assess the feasibility and resource needs for a retrospective or look-back audit of potential overbilling by rostered attorneys. And I did provide you a several-page memo with a lot of background on the work that was done at OPEGA in the past month to sort of do that feasibility assessment for you. And I do have a one-page document I could screen share if you wish, but the high-level finding or bottom line to get to it, just so that we're not, just to get to the bottom line, was that we determined that it would take a significant share of OPEGA's resources to conduct the retrospective audit work. given the data structure and quality issues. And we also found that the expected value of the recouped overpayments would be relatively low when compared to the OPEGA resources required. And so the expected value of the recouped payments would be both factors in there would be the probability of recoupment and also the potential overpayment amounts. So taking those into consideration, what would come at the end, we found that relative to the OPEGA resources required, that would be relatively low. We did evaluate the number of attorneys that would potentially be in a sample for a retrospective audit work. As you all know, the data system has a high volume of attorneys and events. And if a review was done to try and sample 1% of the work events, we could do that, and narrowing it by days billed over 16 hours and specific billing, high billing amounts and time periods. It could be narrowed down to about 6 to 8 attorneys. Based on, Matt Crook did an enormous amount of work over the past month to sort of test this out and see what would be required and what it would involve, and did a manual review of event notes, voucher notes, and voucher override amounts for 2 selected high billing attorneys that were identified in the data. And in looking through the notes fields, which would be something that could explain potentially and help figure out what was going on in billed hours, it turned out that the notes fields actually did not provide much insight to explain what was in the explain further questions that were in the billed hours information. So we also identified that one need to do this type of audit work would be to access attorneys' time records outside of the MCILS system for their work on MCILS. So to verify their MCILS billing would need to also look at attorneys' own time records, and that the GOC could potentially subpoena these time records from attorneys. And that is within the potential outcome, and also would just note that could also be challenged in court, but that there is that potential option to subpoena those records. So once we looked at, Matt did a lot of work in determining what the in-depth would be required, and identified that even there's some challenges, even if OPEGA was able to get the attorney's time records, the structure and issues that have been identified in the MCILS data. And again, this was before my time, but as I understand outlined in the first report, that it's doable. It's just extremely complex because of how that database is set up and how it has been used to date. So that is just a function of the data that we're dealing with. So given what we know about the data and its structure and what would be needed to do this, our best guess, also we looked back at other projects that OPEGA did that involved reconciliation of data of this type, not exactly the same obviously, but projects where OPEGA had to reconcile multiple varied data sets with this level of complexity. And our best estimate at this time is to do the sort of proposed retrospective audit would probably take 2 OPEGA analysts full-time for probably around 9 to 10 months. And so we just wanted to identify that is our best guess at this point, based on spending a month really seeing what it would involve to do this work. And the other issue is, I think the issue obviously for the GOC is just to decide what you want and need for further work and who is best to do that. And so we just, this is just a high level summary of what's been done since February 12th.
Thank you, Director Nixon. So the limited retrospective audit you stated would take potentially 2 analysts, 9 to 10 months. And can you remind me how many analysts we have on staff?
Yeah, we have 7 analysts.
So 2 out of 7, you said this would be their full-time?
That's our best estimate based on what we know now.
Great, thank you. Under OPEGA statute, we do have the ability to make requests of the Office of State Auditor to help facilitate our investigations and our work. And so we've had a couple of conversations with Auditor Dunlap. He's agreed to join us today, and I think he'd like to maybe make some suggestions about how we might proceed. So welcome, Auditor Dunlap.
Thank you, Senator, and it's good to see everybody. It's so strange when I have to take something over to the State House, how empty it all is. So it's good to be able to do some meaningful work. I'm in my home office right now. I was down the highway and I realized I was going to be running late for this, so I turned around, make sure I was not late holding you up. So we have had a number of conversations about this topic. In 2018, and you may or may not be aware that we actually have a fraud hotline. We do get a lot of the complaints we get are relatively minor, someone complaining about a contractor, or we actually have gotten a lot of we've been the first point of contact for some of the unemployment insurance fraud claims where people had claims submitted in their names. So a lot of those come to us first. But much of what we deal with is typically, to be honest with you, misunderstanding more than genuine fraud. And so we do have that fraud hotline, and we did get a complaint about the Commission on Indigent Legal Services along these lines about in 2018. There was some preliminary work done. We had a conversation about that with some folks on the commission, and I've spoken with the director and with the chairs of the committee about that. The inquiry that's come to us is that would we be available in any structure whatsoever to help provide some guidance on internal controls going forward? When that inquiry first came in January and February, we were just beginning to ramp up our work on the single audit, which is going to be issued next week. We feel pretty good about where we are with that right now. And after the single audit is issued, we will have some time and resources to help guide the commission on developing an internal control structure, which apparently has been lacking. The other tine of this fork, of course, is the issue around a retrospective audit of the mechanics of the Commission on Indigent Legal Services and how funds were distributed, to whom, under what circumstances. As Director Nixon has intimated, that's a substantial amount of work. And it is unclear, depending on what the committee decides to do, whether we are in a posture to do that. Initially, we had suggested looking at one of the accounting firms that does audits of municipal government, but coming into the understanding that resources are very, very limited. In other words, there's no money for this. We kind of revisited what our capacity was. And certainly I believe in my conversations with our senior folks that we can be of strong assistance along the lines of developing internal controls going forward. All of us have had experience, at least indirectly, looking at malfeasance in nonprofits, government agencies, private industry, et cetera, when there's a case, say, of embezzlement. And going backward is very, very difficult. It can be of substantial effort and expense, and you really don't recover anything. So, that's the committee's choice as to, and I don't know at this juncture what the committee wants us to do. And when you discuss this and make a formal request, we'll review it and we can advise you of our capacity. And we may be in the same boat, frankly, that OPEG is in. So I'm not going to try to talk you out of it, but I think that what you will probably gain from it is what you already know, is that you've got some problems to deal with. And it may very well be that the best use of our resources here is to correct the structures going forward, rather than dig deeper into what we already understand, is that things were not going the way they're supposed to be going with the commission. So And we understand that at a fairly high level at this juncture. But that's your choice. You're the elected legislators on this committee. And I apologize, Mr. Chairman, that we are not in person, so I cannot bring the requisite candy as a former member of this committee. But I'll leave that to you to decide, but we are able to assist at, I think, a fairly strong level, which would help obtain or achieve some of the committee's goals around having some corrections in place going forward.
Thank you, Auditor Dunlap. I'd like to now turn it over to the committee for questions of either Auditor Dunlap or Director Nixon or general comments. I think we're looking for some feedback on which direction to go. Senator Keim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Auditor Dunlap, welcome. I was wondering, so first of all, I appreciate your comments around internal control structure going forward, and I think it's my impression from talking with the MCLS Commission that they do have some good handles on that, and that structure is changing rapidly, and I think it's safe to say we won't find ourselves in this position in the future. But that being said, they are the experts, and I think, reaching out and seeing if they need help is great. Your agency's help in looking backwards to do an audit of past actions. I'm wondering if you would actually be able to, because of the nature of the material that you would need to look at. So, because I know there's subpoena authority with OPEGA, and what about, just talk to me about that. How would you, is that something that your agency also can take on?
I believe that we can. The real question, Senator, is capacity, whether or not we would have the people who are available to do it. Because as Director Nixon mentioned, this is going to be a lot of work for a long time. This is a government agency, so we would have access to their records. And this is one of the things that if there is misuse of government funds, if there's a fraud, and I'm not saying there is, but if you find that, one of the things about fraud is that typically people who commit it really don't keep records. It's not that there aren't records there, but it's a matter of building a narrative around the incident rather than through the incident, going from the original source. And that takes a little bit of time. We do have the authority to do fraud investigations. It's a matter of the depth of it, the available records, getting into them. And you're right. I mean, this is one of the reasons why OPEGA has subpoena authority, is to sort of expedite access to those types of records. I think depending on what the committee wants to do, we will have an internal conversation about what our capacity is. And we'd also have a conversation with Director Nixon and Mr. Kruk and other members of the OPEGA staff, and try to build, what we could look at and what that would look like, I should say, and probably bring it back to the committee to see if it's something you want to go forward with, if it would satisfy what the committee wants to do, and then take it from there. Again, this is our offices are relatively small too. We have 35 positions, but we're looking at many, many programs in state government throughout the year. And most of our work is really just strictly compliance work, not necessarily doing fraud investigations. The folks that we have devoted to that, relatively small group of people that don't do it all the time, but they're pretty good at it. So I've had some experience with that already. And I think that if we do go down that juncture, I think you would be very, very satisfied with the result, that you would have a complete answer. But again, it's going to be a resource issue as much as anything. We'd have to determine what that would look like depending on the committee's.
So thank you. So a couple of follow-up questions. I mean, you mentioned that you have the authority to look at state agencies' records, but what this would actually entail is looking at the records of the private records of the lawyers in order to create the narrative around each instance to like you said, create the story and figure out if there is fraud.
Yeah.
So would you have that authority though?
We'd have to dig in.
It's also privileged information because it's, lawyer client information that somehow we'd have to work through that anyway.
I don't have a black and white answer to that. We'd have to dig into that.
And then you mentioned that you have a single audit that you're going to report out, and then that would be freeing up resources. What is that audit? And
well, the single audit is the culmination of the audit work that's done throughout the year, and it's a single report that we issue at the end of March every year. So we're finishing up that work right now. In fact, when I go down to Augusta, when I leave this call, I'm going to be proofreading some of it. Some of you may not know that in a previous life, I was a professional proofreader. So I'm being useful in helping out, getting all that, make sure all the corrections are done properly.
I'm so glad to hear that you're being useful. One other question, you mentioned that you had in your office in 2018 had a report of fraud, and it's something your office was following up on. Can you fill me in a little more on that? I kind of don't really understand where that went.
Yes, and if I was in the office, I could give you some detail about that because it's sitting right next to my computer in anticipation of this meeting. But because I ran late and realized that I wasn't going to get down there in time to do this call, I'll have to follow up with you in particular about those findings at that time, and I will get you that information.
So it was investigated and it's now closed satisfactorily? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the questions.
Are there any other questions or comments raised by committee members? All right, seeing none, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Nixon, we do need a motion to go in a direction about what the committee would like to do with this. Oh, I see Senator Keim.
Sorry. I thought other people, I had one other question for Mr. Dunlap. The other question I had was sort of the political insulation OPEGA has and offers this committee. Is that the same in the auditor's office? Because it definitely couldn't be completely the same, but maybe just speak to me on that measure.
It's an excellent question, and I'm glad you asked it because this is one of the things that we talk about. And I've actually had some school groups ask me about my new job. And part of the reason why you elect a state auditor is so that you have that independence. So yes, while I'm a Democrat and it's a partisan issue, a partisan election, nonetheless, the work is not partisan, and to add independence to that is why you elect the auditor. So we would enjoy much the same independence as OPEGA does in pursuing this work.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I had another question for Lucia, if I may. So Lucia, I understand what you're saying about, it's a time-consuming audit process, and based on the cost recovery or the amount of actual money that we may recover, it isn't really, it isn't financially beneficial to us, which I think isn't necessarily the point of what we would be doing. But help me understand from the OPEGA perspective what else we would be accomplishing. So if we had, I think in your report it was in your letter to us 16, there might be 16. Oh, okay. So you would you might investigate 6 to 8 attorneys based on that reduced sample size.
Yes.
Every single phone is going off. So could you help me understand, just based on past investigations that have happened, what we would be accomplishing and what we could possibly be helping here if we still went forward with this?
Sure, and I'm going to have Matt come on screen too, because he's actually did the work this past month and has also been doing OPEGA work for quite some time. So I think he could probably provide some insight into that. So it's my understanding that if you proceeded with a retrospective audit, we would be looking to see, to assess the incidence and degree and extent of potential overbilling and doing this type of verification. And then depending on what we found, if there were evidence that the state had made overpayments, then the question would be, that information would be available. And then the next steps would be for if MCILS and/or through the Attorney General's office, questions about recouping those overpayments. I think it would also, continue to shed light on the issue, how the data system is structured. I think OPEGA did, Matt can fill in more on this, did make recommendations in the November 2020 report based on how the data system, issues within it, and potentially areas that could be strengthened going forward. And I'm not personally familiar with, I know we've talked about the controls they're putting in place. I don't know the details of what they're doing to improve the data system and data quality going forward. So I don't know, we could be in the data, so we would be continuing to identify issues in the data. The retrospective audit would to be looking to see if there was incidences that were billed to MCILS that should not have been, is my understanding.
Thank you. And yes, I would wonder if Matt could add to that.
What we could accomplish looking back is going to be, first, I'd say we're only going to be providing reasonable assurance that, not absolute assurance that these hours were in fact worked. So there is sort of a caveat right at the start. Because of the volume of the records, we'd have to take a sample, as Lucia mentioned, and it would be relatively small. And then in working through that, we find ourselves faced with this ambiguous data that even picking a small sample is going to expand into other areas. A single entry could be misdated and somewhere else over the course of a case spanning months or even over a year. It could be worked by someone else. It could be attributed to one voucher instead of many vouchers when a client has multiple cases pending at the same time. So we have those sort of things in the background. If we were to work through those, it's going to be a lot of work, extensive amount of work. At the end, we may be able to potentially identify what appear to be unsupported overpayments, as in we would be reconciling against the attorney's time records, at the firm. If there's a disconnect there, that is what we would sort of be left with. And that's assuming that we can get the records. I believe that the GOC has subpoena power, not OPEGA. So if that action was taken, and then I believe the Chief Deputy AG, when we spoke with him, said that is either potentially or likely challenged. So if we got those records, we can do the mountain of work, and the length of the time that would take on the outcome is probably a relatively small amount. And where we are certain exactly we'll be able to pin down and say, this is absolutely fraud, it may be more akin to saying, these are identified overpayments that aren't supported by any other contemporaneous time records. We're not sure how that will translate because MCILS doesn't have an administrative process for recoupment, although I believe one was just passed in Judiciary Committee, something in their statute. But but there's a question of whether that applies retroactively. So I'm not sure if those funds would be ever actually recouped. And and it would probably be based on our work of looking at that one self-audit that an attorney done. It's probably going to be a low number of questions, and probably the thing that the strongest result coming out of it was identifying data issues. But we've already done that and we sort of addressed in the phase 1 report. I know that was sort of a sprawling answer all over the place, but I hope that was helpful.
It is helpful, Matt. I know how much time you've put into this, and so your insight is very valuable. Thank you.
Senator DeChambeau. Oh, you're on mute, Senator.
I was saying I can never find my hand to bring it down. I should have brought it down, but my hand was up before Mr. Kruk spoke, and pretty much those were my concerns, and I think he addressed them. I just want to say that I know I'm new, but of all things, when I knew I was appointed, I went online to look up a case, and it happened to be the Blueberry case that I read or I listened to. And it wasn't too difficult. I said, this is a good one. I want to hear this. So I'm familiar with the case, and Senator Moore did a great job presenting it. But I'm a little confused. I'm not ready to figure this in my own head. I think what we're being asked and what we can do is either we're doing too little or we're going to be doing too much. When I think of audits, sometimes, given my experience, I think of criminal activity. So there are audits and there are forensic audits, and I know how involved they are, having read many of them. So the question is, what is it exactly we're going to be looking at? And is it, I wrote it down, is it unethical business conduct? Is it regulatory matters? It's very expensive and it takes a lot of time to do that, but I'm not sure if we're going to be doing too little or too much in reviewing this. It borders on, when you mention fraud, you're mentioning criminal activity. And it seems like, I don't know if this is the place where this should be reviewed. So we'll have to conclude that, I guess. Does all of that make sense? So so that's it. Thank you.
I think the work we would be conducting does fall under that larger umbrella of a forensic audit. We'd be examining the attorney's records to derive evidence that could potentially be used for recoupment or a civil action, and we'd be searching for evidence of fraud. We'd be reconciling the two sets of records, the billed data from MCILS with the attorney records, and trying to find disparities in that, and then doing some potential follow-up work from that to see if there are any other supporting documentation or things that can shed some light on what occurred. That does remind me of your question. When we did speak with the Deputy Chief, it does not seem likely that we'd be able to get attorneys non-MCILS case records. And I know that is sort of the larger picture. They may be taking private cases as well, but that would not be covered in what we'd be looking at.
Thank you, Mr. Kruk. That's good information for me. Thank you.
Senator Khan.
Thank you. So Matt, did you say that you even with subpoena power, you would not be looking at the attorney's private records in order to balance what their, what a voucher might have said for hours served for MCILS versus what they've billed private clients?
We would have, it sounds at this point, we would be requesting or obtaining the records only related to their MCILS caseload. As of the guidance we have, it's our understanding we wouldn't be able to obtain the non-MCILS case records, or time records rather. Is that clearer? No?
Yeah, I thought I had understood that differently prior to this. That feels like news to me.
Lucia, was that your understanding also?
Yes, it was my understanding in consulting with the Attorney General's office that we could subpoena the time records associated with the attorney's own time records connected with their work on MCILS cases, but not their other work.
Representative Millett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we're all struggling to determine what we do with this issue going forward or backward. And I'm finding that I'm caught in this trap of I'm not ready to give up on my concerns relative to the way in which the commission has functioned and the lack of internal controls and fiscal oversight and potential for mismanagement, if not fraud. But I don't see a way in which we can do a retrospective audit that would reach back in time and achieve the results or the response that many of us would like to see. And I'm feeling that we're in the middle of a current and a future phase of this commission's improved status. We have an interim director who's been before us, and he seemed to have a better handle on the concerns we have raised and the concerns that the OPEGA staff have identified. That commission was with us, and they have some good ideas and some new thinking. Last week, the Appropriations Committee heard the report from the Judiciary Committee that advanced 8 broad recommendations that include structural, staffing, fiscal, and internal control responses that they would like to see going forward. Those responses are not yet included in anything budgetarily, but I assume will be given proper attention, in the next month or so as we try to establish priorities going forward. So I guess in a long way around the issue, Senator and members, I'm wondering if we might put this issue on hold for a month, give us an opportunity to see if the structural changes and the progress being made warrant more of a focus on establishing internal controls and oversight that might be jointly provided by Auditor Dunlap and Matt Kruk and others from OPEGA, because I think that's where the problems have been in the past and are most likely curable going forward. That being the internal controls, the adherence to policy, the following of statute, the actual leadership within, rather than the past, which troubles us all. So I guess I'm wondering aloud, and I don't feel comfortable walking away from this issue because it's troubled me for many years. I just don't see the value and the return on the investment to do a wholesale forensic audit looking backward. But I would like to see us hold on to the issue, find out where we could maximize the available talent to help the interim staff and those that follow do a better job of internally managing this difficult constitutional responsibility. I do think there is much value from what I know of internal controls with good leadership that we could right the ship if we stay with it and not give up on it.
Thank you, Representative Millet. I'm feeling in a similar way to you on where we go. I do feel like potentially we need to have some discussion about the consulting role that we're considering as a request of the state auditor, and how that might fit with the OPEGA staff, who are not necessarily consultants, more auditors, investigators, that sort of thing. I see that Director Nixon has her hand up. I wonder if she could speak to that in addition to whatever else she was going to be speaking to.
Sure, this follows up on what Representative Millet was saying about, I just wanted to fill in the pieces around potentially pausing or giving a little time, in that one of the votes that the GOC did take in February was to require MCILS to come back to the GOC on a quarterly basis. And that first quarterly report, it would be in May. So it's just over a month. We're close to the end of March. But that first quarterly report, or you could certainly, if you needed to, invite them sooner. But we do have that structure set up, that you set up to have that ongoing oversight on a quarterly basis. And if there are specific matters that you would like them to address at that first quarterly presentation, I could certainly help communicate that to the commission. I just wanted to put that out there, that quarterly checkpoint is coming up. It is a little more than a month, which is what Representative Millet had said. So that was what I was raising my hand to mention.
Thank you. And Lucia, could you speak a bit to whether the OPEGA analysts that have worked on this issue it'd be appropriate for them to engage in this sort of consulting role with MCILS, or?
Sure. So you're correct. So OPEGA's role is, and our statutory directive is to provide program evaluation. And that can take many forms. It can involve performance auditing. It can involve, the types of other program evaluations, how a program is being implemented, whether the outcomes are being achieved. So but our mission is program evaluation. And out of those evaluations, we might come forward with findings and suggested methods or recommendations that an agency might take. But that the role of OPEGA is not one of figuring out the implementation level of what comes out. We can certainly, we would certainly be available to, share what we've learned through our work with the Office of the State Auditor and MCILS if they were engaged going forward in a way of the state auditor providing them some help with their efforts, their current efforts to improve their internal controls. But our role would not, that would not directly align with our statutory function, which is program evaluation.
Thank you. Senator Khan.
Thank you. Well, following on and just thinking out loud here as well, but it's complex. I mean, the lack of good records, which has led us, lack of good record keeping has led us to where we are, and makes it incredibly difficult to pinpoint the issues looking backwards. And that being said, I absolutely hate to walk away from this, having heard all that I've heard, and just the most egregious examples of just really poor record keeping, and now that there's an awareness, I think, out there of all that's been going on, I think it also looks bad to the people of Maine, and for our job, for us to accept what we see as serious issues around, likely overbilling. And so for me to just not even capture any of them in in some more detail where we can say, yes, this, you know, this rises to the level of, you know, at least unsupported overpayments, and name some names. I don't know. I'm struggling with walking away and not having greater accountability to the people of Maine on this issue, at least with some of the high overbillers. That's my struggle. That's just, you know, me sharing it exactly as I see it, and as I try to sift through this information and weigh it against the years that I've put into listening to this and seeing it as such an issue, and trying to draw attention to it and have it be fixed, to get to this point and then say, well, it's too difficult to hold anybody accountable, is really hard to accept.
Thank you, Senator Kime. Representative Millett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to restate what I was trying to do in my struggling comments, and encourage my senator from Dixville not to interpret what I was saying as walking away. I really think we do have an obligation to correct the wrongs that we all feel have occurred, or we sense have occurred. I'm just trying to put the resources toward looking down the road rather than looking backward at something that might be costly and tax our own staff to the point where it may not be justified given the budget that we work with. I'm wondering if the quarterly update from the current interim director, with an opportunity maybe for not a consultation role between Lucia and Matt and Auditor Dunlap, but a conversation that might refocus the issue of forward help and oversight to some extent in developing the appropriate controls, might be something we could get our teeth into in the May meeting. But I want to just reiterate, I was not recommending giving up on this challenge. I just am wondering aloud, and I'm just one voice, is it something we want to ask 2 of the 7 people to spend 9 months on, in their own words, the likelihood of return in terms of recovery might be small, if not insignificant. So if I was misunderstood and wanting to close the book, I am not recommending that at all. I'm recommending putting our resources in the best way going forward to help correct the wrongs that might have occurred and get us on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Millett. Further questions or comments from the committee? Senator Kime.
Yeah, if I may just respond. Yes, I understood, Representative Millett, what you were saying, and I understand no one wants to walk away from this, and I'm just struggling with the idea of whether the value is in how much money we recover versus holding some people more accountable, right? And actually naming names. And yeah, I'm not sure I can vote in favor of not having them do that, but I totally understand that we're weighing the value of resources. And that is important to me as well, because we have important work to do. And going forward, we need to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And yet it's hard for me also knowing that the very same people who possibly have been putting in unsupported overpayments are still going to be part of the new system, and the new system will hopefully not allow it. but it will be built possibly with the same people. And that is the other, but we can't capture them all. So I'm being honest when, in the assessment overall, knowing that, if we could point out everyone and say, well, you dealt dishonestly with the state and therefore you don't have a state job anymore, and say, and then just keep the really great ones that we do have, that would be fabulous. But I think it's, I understand that that's not possible. So anyway, yeah, so I understand your motion and where you're coming from with that. And just am expressing my complete unease at our inability to do what I really want to do.
Understood, Senator Kime. I do have to apologize. I had to step away 15 minutes ago for a phone call that I couldn't miss. I just wanted to make sure, is there a motion on the floor? No. Okay. A motion would be in order at this time, if someone would like to make one. Representative Millett?
I said too much. My only motion, I guess, if I would ask staff if they could organize the May return of the interim director and commission, possibly inviting Auditor Dunlap to join us in a conversation of what might happen or what could be done, both retrospectively and prospectively, to enhance the credibility and performance of the Maine Commission on Indigent Legal Services. It's not a very good motion, but that's what I'm trying to see if we can organize something along that line.
Thank you, Representative Millett. Would you be open to a friendly amendment where we ask the OPEGA staff and the staff from the Department of Audit to meet with the commission staff and have these discussions and report back to us at the quarterly check-in with MCILS?
I'd not only accept it, I'd prefer it. So whatever that, and I want Senator Kime to really be comfortable with that direction, because it's not walking away, in my view. It's reconnecting with the past and the future.
Thank you, Representative Millett. So Representative Millett has made a motion. He's accepted my friendly amendment. Is there a second? Senator Kime seconds the motion. Any discussion? Further questions or comments?
I will only say that I respect the wisdom and definitely support the motion.
That's why I turn to Representative Millett for motions, because he often makes very wise ones. Is there any further discussion? Is the committee ready for the question? Etta, could you call the roll?
Yes. Senator Libby?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Bailey? Senator DeChambeau?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Kime?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Timberlake?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Bennett? Representative McDonald?
Yes.
Yes. Representative O'Neill? Representative Stover?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Dillingham? Absent. Representative Millett?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Arata?
Yes.
Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 yes, 4 absent.
Thank you. Motion carries. Auditor Dunlap, thank you for joining us this morning for the discussion and for your work going forward. We look forward to seeing you again at the MCILS report back.
Thank you, Senator. I look forward to being with you. And I just wanted to add, I completely support Senator Kime's comments. I think what we're looking for here is, what does accountability actually mean? And I think that's going to be the core of the work that you do going forward. And I look forward to supporting you in it.
Thank you. Okay, again, I've taken one item out of order because we'd like to just do the discussion on the work plan and the vote at the end, make sure that we're taking up all the items that could be impacting that work plan. So the next item, if there is no objection, taking something out of order, would be under tab number 7, request for a review of the Wild Blueberry Commission update. We had communicated to the chairs of ACF at the committee's request. Last month, I think our letter got to them a bit later than we had hoped. And the ACF chairs did reply that they've received the request. Given that at the time they received the request, we'd really given them 2 weeks to respond. I think they honestly, but in good faith, replied they weren't able to make the deadline we'd requested because they were dealing with a pretty complex supplemental and biennial budget review. So Lucia, I know that we've communicated back. Do you recall the time frame they were expecting to be able to complete that request that we made?
Sure. So they wrote back to you and said they'd be happy to hold a briefing with the commission sometime in April and report back to the GOC towards the very end of April. And so towards the end of April. So they just need a little bit more time now that they've gotten through their other pressing work.
So again, as a reminder, I think we were hoping the policy committee could make the requested documents and have that discussion at their level to see if that resolves the concerns of the Washington County delegation. And if not, then I think many of us might be open to adding it to our work plan. So that's how I view the posture of that matter. And I'm open to anyone else who has comments or questions on that. Seems like we're good to go. So with that, I will turn it over to Director Nixon, who's going to make a presentation of the 2021-2022 work plan. And that is behind tab number 6 in your packet.
Yes, and those materials went out by email yesterday. So they were designated as tab 6, but if you're looking from them in what was mailed last week, you won't see them. So I can screen share as necessary. So thank you for the opportunity to present the work plan to the GOC. This is required in statute that each year the director present the work plan for its consideration and approval. Historically, to coincide with the flow of work of the legislature, OPEGA has worked on a biennial plan. So we have before you now the 2021-2022 work plan to coincide with the 130th legislature. I also wanted to note that this is really, I understand, and it makes a lot of sense that it's a somewhat of a living document. You do this annual review and approval, but to be responsive to the needs and interests of the GOC and the legislature over the course of the biennium, the GOC can amend or adjust the work plan at any time by vote. So we will look at it now, and I find one helpful way to look at it is sort of this is the baseline and the framework as you really fully embark onto your work for the 130th legislature. So for me, materials distributed was a cover memo that I've been mentioning points from just now, outlining the process, and then momentarily I will share the actual document for you to work through. So let me go ahead and see if I can pull that up. Okay, 1 second. Okay. Sometimes Zoom is, okay, let's see if I can do that. Are you seeing the work plan now? Yes, okay, great. So up front, I wanted to let you know, give you a little tour of how it's outlined. There are 4 parts. The first part is the work plan for OPEGA evaluations. And this is on pages 1 and 2. And under that, the OPEGA evaluation work plan, we have 3 sections. The approved projects continued from 2019 and 2020 work plan. We have what were called standby projects, and historically have also been referred to as on-deck projects from the 2019-2020 work plan. And then we have the third section is upcoming projects required by statute. And these list the tax expenditure evaluations that are required by law, and that you have recently at your last meeting reviewed the category assignments and schedule for those. On the next page is a continuation of the remaining tax expenditure work that's scheduled. And I'm just going to briefly go through the overall structure and then we can go back. I've also included, for your reference as you think about your overall work, a section on new requests that are currently under consideration. So the status of the wild blueberry request, and then after today, we would update the status of the DAF's workday request. Finally, on page 3, the document presents recently completed evaluations that have follow-up work ongoing. So that would be the Maine Commission on Indigent Legal Services Part 1, which you just discussed, and also the Pine Tree Development Zones Limited Scope Review, for which you have questions that you have sent to DECD to consult also with MRS and report back to the GOC in April. And finally, the document presents, for your reference, other OPEGA work that is required by statute that will be occurring during 2021 and 2022. So I'm going to jump back to the beginning of the document. Does anyone have any questions before I proceed with a more detailed review of what's presented here? I'm not seeing anybody, but I also admit I can't see everybody on the screen because I'm screen sharing. So, okay, I will proceed then. So on the work plan for the evaluations for OPEGA to conduct in 2021, 2022, we have the following. We have 6 projects that were approved and have been continued from the prior work plan. We have the Maine Citizens Initiative process. That has been an ongoing project for several years, and we are working to finish that up and get it reported to you in the second quarter of this year. And as you see, the way that I've aligned this document, I know for some of you familiar with for previous work plans, there were a number of dates in different places, and this works for me. Let me know if it works for you to sort of have it sequentially when the request was presented, when the project was approved by the GOC, when the project scope or evaluation parameters were approved. We use different language for different projects. And then a sort of very tentative target for the report date to give you a sense of where we are, and then the planned work by year. Second on the list, we have a project underway, which is the evaluation of the seed capital investment tax credit. This is a tax evaluation, so it does not have was not presented as a review request. The parameters for this evaluation were approved in January 2020, and this project is in full swing with a target report date of the third quarter of calendar year 2021. Now we have here the Maine Commission on Indigent Legal Services, which you were just discussing. This is part 2 of that project. If you recall, the project was broken into two parts to expedite certain scope questions. And so part one, which addressed, I think it was 3 scope questions, was presented in November, and that's the follow-up work you were just discussing. There is a part 2 of this project, which is focused on questions surrounding the determinants of eligibility for indigent legal services, and also those who are deemed partially indigent and have some responsibility to pay a portion of the costs. So OPEGA is actively working on that project and has a target report date of the 3rd quarter of this calendar year. The next 2 items relate to what you discussed earlier. So there was the follow-up survey of frontline workers, and a motion made this morning would be to direct OPEGA to proceed with that survey. The other piece of that was the evaluation of out-of-home placements based on the discussion earlier this morning. That would not be, would be moved off the active work plan if you want to fold that in at this time. The next 2 items are very long-standing projects that have been on the work plan. In the cover memo that I presented and sent to you yesterday, there's the 2nd page of that memo provides background on these 2 projects. They're listed in different categories on the work plan, but the bottom line is that both of these projects have been inactive for quite a few years. The substance abuse treatment programs in the corrections system was originally requested in March of 2009, so 12 years ago. It continued, it was placed on the on-deck list as a possible future evaluation at that time. It continued on the on-deck list until 2017 in the summer, so about 3.5 years ago. And this was a point at which the GOC was reviewing a number of projects on the on-deck list, and the OPEGA director was looking for guidance on what might come up next. And at that time, there was some interest in moving substance abuse treatment programs in corrections onto the active work plan. However, since that time, over the past 3.5 to 4, coming up on 4 years, the project has not, no action has been taken on this project as the GOC has prioritized other projects for the attention of OPEGA. Similarly, what's listed under standby projects is a project that was introduced in February of 2013, so 8 years ago, and it was placed on the work plan at that time. It was brought forward at a time when the Health and Human Services Committee had some concerns about whether DHHS had sufficient audit staff and whether their savings could be identified if they were fully staffed. And the GOC got some initial information from the department and decided to outline a general scope of work looking at the department's audit capacity, resources, functions, and capabilities. This project remained on the plan, but was not, no work was taking place. And in 2019, so 2 years ago, it was moved off the active approved projects list and on to the standby list, where it has remained to date. And there are a few more details if you want the history, additional history in the memo that I sent you. So the 3rd and final section of the work plan that's fully the evaluation work plan are the upcoming projects required by statute. We have 2 where we are doing initial work, 2 full evaluations, the credit for the rehabilitation of historic properties and the research expense tax credit. Those are the next 2 full evaluations. And we're expecting to bring parameters for the GOC's review and approval in the 2nd quarter of this year. So actually, hopefully by the end of April, we will have those to you. And the discussion up to this point has been an expectation that we would start first with the credit for rehabilitation of historic properties and get that wrapped up by the end of this calendar year. So hopefully by December of 2021. And then the next ones in line would be the research expense tax credit, followed by the shipbuilding facility credit and the tax benefits for media production companies. And as we get further along with each of these, we'll be able to outline the schedule for the remainder. On the second page, we also list other required tax review work that we will do in 2021 and 2022, which is OPEGA's work regarding the expedited tax expenditure reviews, which are on an annual schedule. And OPEGA does research and provides a report to the taxation committee and also provides that to the GOC, but then the taxation committee takes it the next step from there for the expedited reviews. But that does require a chunk of work by OPEGA to prepare and deliver those reports at the end of each calendar year. The new requests are to let you know, so you can keep in mind what you have under consideration. We've talked about both of these today. And then, as I mentioned, there are 2 recently completed evaluations where there's follow-up work going on. And we will add to this list as we go through the 2 years of this biennium. As things get completed, we would add them to recently completed and document follow-up work that is ongoing. And then I just referenced for you other things that we work on and are projects for us, but not evaluation projects, are our annual reports each year. And then another tax piece that we do, which is to prepare and review the category assignments and schedule for tax expenditures. And that was something we discussed at our last meeting. So we prepare materials for that go to the GOC and then the tax committee. So I'd be happy to take any questions. I think it would be on this first page here that I'm showing. If you wanted to make any specific updates to the child protective lines and or the substance abuse treatment one and the DHHS audit ones, those are the ones that I see as, I mean, you can do anything you want with any of it, but those are the ones where we would look to need some further direction or clarification.
Thank you, Director Nixon. I think one item I was hoping we could discuss as a committee is considering the 2 potential new requests that we've received just since the beginning of the new year. It would be hard for me to advise the staff on how to prioritize those potential requests in relation to the other items on our work plan that date back to 2013 and 2009 respectively. It would be hard for me to say that those older items should be moved ahead of the other potential assignments we may have. And so those 2 older requests have kind of been languishing for literally years. And I wonder if there is an appetite on the committee to perhaps take them off so that we know we can be assured we have space in the upcoming year to take on additional requests. I'm offering that as a suggestion. I'd really like to hear what other committee members have to say. First, I saw Representative McDonald, followed by Senator Khan.
Thank you. I certainly have an appetite to determine if these items need to still be on the work plan. I do like tying up loose ends, and it appears to me that those items it should be determined what to do with them moving forward. They've been there for a very long time, so it is in my opinion that they either need to be heard and moved forward or taken off.
Thank you, Representative McDonald. I know you have a scheduling commitment at noon, so
I do. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Senator Khan.
Yeah, I agree with Representative McDonald. I think we need to move them forward or take them off. And the DHS one was the one that was in 2013, but which was the one that was in 2019? I missed that one.
It was 2009.
Oh, 2009. It
And
does
I
not.
believe it was correct Department of Corrections, I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm not sure how we evaluate those two, but I mean, obviously it's a GOC prior to us. So should we have an overview of what they are? Or maybe since no one's hounding us anymore, we can safely assume they aren't an issue.
I know Lucia had prepared a bit of a summary on both and the materials sent by email. I know they weren't ready in time for the printed packet. So if members need a moment to pull those up, there is some summary there.
I didn't print those out. Are you saying there's a summary of both of these?
Would you like me to screen share that?
That would be helpful. Thank you, Lucia.
Okay, sure. Okay, so hold on a second. So this was in material sent. The first page was just an overview of the process. And then here on the second page, the top half is an update or some background I gathered for you on the project that's been here since it was requested in 2009. I'll give you a moment to look at that. I would note that it started out as a specific request about two programs, the Correctional Recovery Academy and the intensive outpatient program that they were using in 2009. And it's my understanding that those specific programs are no longer, they have shifted their substance abuse programming services at least once since then. And so the project remained as sort of a general topic about substance abuse services in corrections, but not those specific two programs.
Excuse me, Senator Libby? Okay.
Please proceed.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you want comments on that or wait till we do the next one or what?
You're welcome to comment on this one while we have it.
Okay.
While we have it on our screen before us.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. And I apologize. I did print it out and I did underline it, so I'm familiar with it. I was shocked that it was still there since 2009. In that it Department of Corrections and Substance Use Disorder Programs. Even the name has changed in 11 years, has greatly changed. And so the initial one, Ms. Nixon is correct, is no longer there as a result of an investigation or a review anyways. And everything else, I see that March of 2021, the notes and update, there's been no substantive work on the project since August of 17. Basically, that's saying it stopped when the last commissioner left. So I don't even know if Commissioner Liberty knows of this or should update us. So I wanted you to know that. Right now, substance use disorder, the department is involved in MAT, which is medical assisted treatment, where they get medication and evaluations, much more. So if anything, I don't know what the process is, but I trust we could get a report from the Department of Corrections to update this, and then you'd be able to make a decision.
Thank you, Senator DeChambeau. Director Nixon.
I just wanted to provide one clarification because I think my wording was maybe not as clear as it could be. So that March 2021 update is about work done by OPEGA. So since from March 2009 to August 2017, the GOC had this as an on-deck project for potential future work, and no work was conducted by OPEGA. In 2017, it was moved from on deck to the active work plan, but again, it was never prioritized or OPEGA was never directed to begin work on it. So that was the August 2017. So the fact is that OPEGA, the GOC has never had OPEGA proceed with any substantive work on this project.
Thank you for that.
Director Nixon, do you want to briefly summarize the DHHS audit?
Sure.
That functions?
So yeah, so this other project that you have, DHHS audit functions. In 2013, Senator Craven, who was on the GOC, brought this as from the HHS committee. There was discussion and questions around DHHS auditing, and particularly around whether they had sufficient staffing. And if they did have sufficient staffing, what savings could potentially be identified. At the time, the GOC requested and received information from the department and discussed a general scope of work to look at a review of the agency's audit efforts, resources, and capabilities, and the degree to which they have sufficient resources to be effective. And it was added to the work plan. Again, it was a situation where other projects took priorities over the next 6 years, and no further action was directed. And then it moved off the active work plan onto the standby list. And then it has been on the standby list for the last 2 years.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the committee on these two matters? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given the length of time since they originally were placed before the GOC and the absence of any work commitment, it would seem to me, given your comments a minute ago about the number of new issues that we're looking at, that it would be timely and appropriate to remove them in their entirety from the standby list. And I would so move.
Thank you, Representative Millett. Motion's been made by Representative Millett to remove these two items from the work plan. Is there a second? Senator Keim has seconded the motion. Unfortunately, I'm looking at the screen. It looks like we are down to 6. And we need 7, I believe, to take an action.
Is there anybody else that you know that we could call that's
Senator Keim, I don't know if you might be able to reach out to any of your colleagues. Same goes for Representative Stover or Arata.
While we're waiting on that, could I offer just one question from my angle on the motion?
Please.
Sure. So I don't know, you can do it either way, but I also wondered if you wanted to incorporate in the motion the direction that you gave to proceed with work on the frontline survey, just to add that to the piece so that we're clear, we can update the work plan on that. And then what you wanted to do with the item directly below that, which was the prior project to do out-of-home placements for children. And it was my understanding, what I heard this morning was to do the survey and then determine, it could be that, it could be something else. So I don't know the best disposition of that row on the line, but I just wanted to draw your attention to those 2 lines as well, just to make sure we cover those in any way necessary. If you want to leave them as is, as presented here, we can do that. Based on the earlier vote, I would update the final column for the follow-up survey, which currently says paused.
Sure. I think you have direction on the second part of the frontline worker survey, Lucia, from the earlier action this morning. So if it's okay with you, I don't know that the motion needs an amendment, but
Sure.
we have a few minutes to kill. So if we want to have those parliamentary debates, I'm open to it. Senator DeChambeau. Oh, and sorry, Senator DeChambeau had her hand raised, then Senator Khan. Yes, please, Senator DeChambeau.
Thank you. I just want to talk about that motion, just to inquire. The motion was to remove them from the standby. I don't know if it's overkill on my part or semantics, but the Department of Correction is on a work plan and DHS is on standby. So that would be clarified in the motion. They're not both on standby.
I believe the motion is to remove them from our list of items to work at some point, removing them all together.
All right, because I heard him say standby, but if it's to remove them, fine. Okay.
Looks like Senator Bennett is in the waiting room, so I'll admit him, and then we can get him up to date on the motion while we're waiting for him to connect. Senator Khan.
I was only going to let you know that Senator Bennett had said he could leave one call and join ours back so that we could vote.
Thank you. Senator Bennett, we have a motion on the floor and your presence constitutes a quorum. So thank you for joining us again. I know you have other places you have to be. The motion before us is to remove from OPEGA's work plan 2 items that have been on our work plan for 12 and 8 years respectively without action. DHHS audit functions and Department of Corrections substance abuse programs. The committee's had some discussion. Given the other items that we will be asked to take a look at this year, I think we're headed to a vote on removing those 2 items. Motion was made by Representative Millett, was seconded by Senator Khan. With that, any questions from the committee? Committee ready for the question? Etta, please call the roll.
Senator Libby?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Bailey? Absent. Senator DeChambeau?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Keim?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Timberlake? Absent. Senator Bennett?
Yes.
Yes. Representative McDonald? Absent. Representative O'Neill? Absent. Representative Stover?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Dillingham? Absent. Representative Millett?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Arata?
Yes.
Yes. 6, 7, yes.
Thank you. The motion carries. Lucia, I want to confirm that it's a statutory requirement that we approve the work plan.
Correct.
All right. So I think I may have erred. I believe we need another motion now to approve the work plan as presented and amended. So Representative Millett, will you make that motion?
I would so move, and thank you for correcting my language before.
No.
Could I make just a comment, Senator, because I've been thinking about the excessive amount of time we're putting on tax expenditures, which are really tax exemptions. I remember you being there in taxation and 127th when they tried to do everything on that whole list in one fell swoop and then structured it and so on. I've been thinking about this and talking with a lot of people that feel that maybe we're taking on too many tax expenditure issues on a regular basis, and we might be better advised if we focused on tax incentives that motivate economic recovery or have larger policy questions. So going forward, when we have more time, and this is probably not the time, I really would love to have a conversation with all of you about trying to look at the economic development 10-year plan and tying to it what we can do to sharpen our tools in the economic area with tax incentives and spend less time on the mundane tax expenditure issues. But having said that, and this being too late in the game to try to even engage in a discussion, I'm totally comfortable with the motion pending. And I would hope that we'd have an opportunity for this discussion at some later time. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Millet. I would agree, and I think we will. I would like to have that conversation, and we could potentially put it on our meeting of the 9th or the 23rd. And I think it's timely and needed. So we have a motion on the floor to adopt the work plan as presented and amended. Is there a second? Senator Shambo has seconded the motion. Any questions or discussion from the committee? Is the committee ready for the question? Thank you. Etta, will you call the roll?
I will. Senator Libby?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Bailey? Absent. Senator DeChambeau?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Keim?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Timberlake? Absent. Senator Bennett?
Yes.
Yes. Representative McDonald? Absent. Representative O'Neill? Absent. Representative Stover?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Dillingham? Absent. Representative Millet?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Arata?
Yes.
Yes. 7 yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Understanding the hour of the day, I know folks do need to get to afternoon meetings. So for the remainder of the agenda, I'd ask if we can try to move as quickly as reasonable. Next item we have is report from director. Lucia, please proceed.
Sure. So the one item I want to draw your attention to in your materials that were sent out is a document which is submission of the OPEGA annual reports for 2019 and 2020. So we consolidated this into one document to get caught up. And these annual reports are a good introduction for those of you new to the committee this session, about what OPEGA does and what particular activities we've had in the last 2 years, and a good refresher for those who have been around. So I would just point you to that report, and if you have questions as you have time to review them, please let me know.
Thank you, Director Nixon. Any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, the next item on our agenda is planning for upcoming meetings. So for April 9th, we're still developing that agenda. Perhaps we could consider some of the discussion that Representative Millet was interested in having at that meeting on the 9th, which would be a deeper dive into the tax expenditure evaluation parameters generally, and what's required for a full review, expedited review, or no review. And I know Representative Millet would avail himself to have discussion outside the meeting to try to frame that out. April 23rd, we'll take a look at the proposed evaluation parameters for the historic preservation tax credit and the research and development credit. We'll also have a report back from DECD on Pine Tree Development Zones, and hoping for the report back from ACF on Blueberry Commission. And then in May, we'll have our first quarterly report from MCILS. Any comments or questions on any of those items as we sort of map out the next 6 to 8 weeks? And as always, if you have ideas, suggestions, requests, please feel free to reach out to the chairs, to the staff, or the leads on the committee. Okay. I think we're getting ready for lunch. Senator Kime.
Sorry, the raise hand function is always like more steps than I want to bother with. It's so much easier to just raise my hand. Yes, and then for the next meeting, are we requesting that DAFs would respond to us so we could also take up the workday issue and explore that a little further? Okay, great, thanks.
Yes, my apologies. I'm looking at a printed agenda, but this morning we did vote to add that to our list, and I believe we'll prepare a letter that is looking for a response prior to our next meeting within 2 weeks. Okay. Anything else? Seeing none. The next GOC meeting is scheduled for Friday, April 9th, 2021 at 9 in the morning. I want to thank all the committee members and especially the staff for hanging with us this morning. I feel it was a fairly productive conversation. We've got a number of projects moving. So with that, I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Representative Stover, seconded by Senator Kime. All those in favor, please raise your hands. All opposed? Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I just have to hit end, right? End meeting for all.
No, first you have to shut the YouTube feed, I think.
Yeah, oops, hold on. So I have to take this off. First I have to what?
And the YouTube stream.
Oh. Where's that, Amy?
The 3 dots.
Oh, just right here.
I think it's on your sheet.
But down at the bottom. Oop, did they go? Where that bar comes up. You're in this screen. Hover over the bottom so that, or click